Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the present perfect tense, which is a little bit of a misnomer, if you will. It sounds like it would be present tense, but it's actually the past tense. Specifically, this is the past tense that Germans use most often when they're speaking. So it's our conversational past. Conversational past. Now that is completely separate, of course, from the simple past, which you guys already learned, which is usually referred to as the narrational past. The reason being is that it's mostly written, except when you're using haben sein and the modal verbs and a couple of others, which you're learning later on. But present perfect tense is the past tense. In German, we just call it perfekt. The English is called present perfect because the helper verbs that it uses, and it uses two of them, helper verbs are in present tense. Now, helper verbs are also called auxiliaries, which is why I always will have aux. That's the auxiliary verb. The helper verb that you use when you have the present perfect are going to be haben and sein. So that is why there's so much importance to knowing haben and sein and their full conjugation in present tense because, well, and past tense, because you're going to need them anytime you use them as a helper verb. In addition to having a helper verb, you're also going to have something called a past participle. Now, the past participles are formed by taking the stem of a verb. You're going to have a GE in front of it, then you're going to have a stem, and then you're going to have a T or an EN ending. And there's some variety there. Now, the first one we're going to look at are regular verbs. The thing that is really hard about this when you're saying things like regular verbs and irregular verbs is that not all verbs that are regular in the present tense are going to be regular in the past perfect and vice versa. So saying regular verbs and irregular verbs, it seems like it's going to help you and you're going to be able to memorize things that way, but really you just have to learn what the actual past participles are. Now, when you have regular verbs, an example of that would be spielen. You're going to take, let me make an EG in front of that. You're going to take the stem, which is your Spiel, right? So you're dropping that ending. You're going to put a GE in front of it, and you're going to add a T. So that looks a lot like when you had played. So we add an ED, in German we add a T, kind of sounds the same. Of course, this is all one word. So gespielt is your past participle for spielen. Another one you would maybe see as a regular one is machen. So machen, the past participle, you're going to have the stem, mach. You're going to add a GE to the front, a T to the end, and you have gemacht. So of course that means made or done. So notice this one in English is not regular. It is in German. Unfortunately, you will see that they don't perfectly align. Whenever you use these in sentences, the way a sentence is going to look, for example, if I say I played soccer, you're going to say ich habe, there's your helper verb, Fußball, I'm just going to abbreviate so I have enough room, and then gespielt. Ich habe Fußball gespielt. So the structure is the second place verb is going to be your auxiliary verb, and that is the verb that gets conjugated. So you're conjugating for ich, that's your E ending, second place. The second part of the past tense in this case is that past participle, and it goes at the very end of the sentence. Or clause, of course, if you have a multi-clause sentence. So that is your past participle. Now, notice when you have a past participle, the past participle itself is always the same. You're not going to add any endings to the end of this. It stays consistent no matter what the changes in the front. So this was ich habe Fußball gespielt. I played soccer. If I were to say you played soccer, I would say du hast Fußball gespielt. So notice, the only thing that changed is your helper verb in second place, your auxiliary. Everything else stayed the same. Another rule you need to remember is that even if it is a regular verb and you're just adding the T at the end and the GE, there are some oddballs, and those are actually similar to your present tense. So for example, if you have arbeiten, if you in present tense have conjugated this for the ihr form, let's do the ihr form. Ihr, you're going to take Arbeit. There's your stem. Now the S1010 ending, you know, is a T for ihr. So you can't just add a second T there. So we had said that when you have this T, you're going to need to add an extra E. So things that end in T or D, you're adding an E. Right? So that's just for your present tense. When you then have the past participle, the same rule is going to apply. So your past participle, it is a regular verb, present and past tense. So you have Arbeit, there's your stem. I'm going to add a GE to the front. And then you have to add a T to the end. But again, we have this T, so we're going to add an extra E. So gearbeitet is what that sounds like when you say it. So arbeitet, gearbeitet. And of course, in case you don't remember, this also applies when you have a GN. There's another one that you guys are responsible for that is on your list in this vocab, or actually there's two more, and those are baden and zeichnen. Do you guys remember what these two verbs mean? So hopefully you remembered. This one was to bathe, and this one was to draw. So if you look at the ending of those, you have a D here, and here you have an odd sounding combination. This is similar to the GN, so we're going to apply the same rule. When you have a hin, that's like jn, you're going to add an extra E. So gebadet, your regular form, and gezeichnet. There's one more thing you need to know about regular verbs. There's a group of verbs that we refer to as ieren verbs. Ieren verbs. Now, ieren verbs are actually verbs that sound very much like English words. They just have ieren added to the end of it. So one of the ones you guys learned in German 1 would be telefonieren. So you have telefonieren. Of course, we don't say that we telephone people anymore in American English, but telefon, you guys definitely understand is a telephone. So telefonieren. Then you have a word that I think you learned at the beginning of this year. It's informieren. So you have inform, and then we add an ieren to the end of that. You have reparieren. Now that's spelled a little different, but that is repair, so to repair. So informieren, telefonieren, reparieren. There are lots more of these, and they all look like English words. So for example, diskutieren, to discuss, korrigieren, to correct, markieren, to mark, programmieren, to program, reduzieren, to reduce. So lots and lots of these. Essentially, if you have an English verb and you don't know the German version of it, if you try to end an ieren to the end, you may just have created the German verb, or it may already exist. We sometimes have better ones in German, of course, like more true German words, but a lot of them have come into the language. One notable exception is if a verb in English ends in ate, you have to drop that before you add an ieren. Okay, that was just a side note. The reason these ieren verbs are important for us today is because when you have past participles for them, you never add an GE to them. Never add GE. So they do not get a GE in the front. They are regular verbs though, so the only way to see that they're actually conjugated in some way and not the infinitives is because they end up with a T. So it's going to look like this: telefoniert, informiert, and repariert. And of course, those are all your past participles. So those are the rules that you need to know for regular verbs and for the sentence structure. We're going to do lots of practice with that. I'm going to give you the practice separately in a note. So look for the note popping up